and welcome to I Can't Believe It's Not the Mouse, the podcast all about animation not made by the mouse. I'm your host, Octaviano Macias, and today I'm going to be talking about a very recent movie. It just released in theaters, and while I normally don't do this, I did feel like, okay, you know what? I want to talk about it a little bit, especially because this is a movie coming from a studio that previously I had said I would never do. Now, I've already broken this rule because I've done 3 of their movies, but this is the first time I'm doing one where it's part of a franchise that was part of the reason why I just was not interested in doing this company's movies. I am talking about Minions and Monsters. Before we get started, I just want to say, if you're listening to this on YouTube, go ahead and give it a like, subscribe to the channel, feel free to comment, and ring the bell for notifications. Also, if you're on Spotify or just any other podcast site, follow this show on those platforms. The obvious question is, why have I not been wanting to talk about Illumination films? This was a video I did way back. If you're on YouTube, I'll link it below. But it was a video that I did with a guest years ago, I want to say about 3 years ago, where essentially I was just like, look, I am not the biggest fan of Illumination. I think a lot of their movies are just very basic, they're very simple, they're movies that are made for kids. Over time, I've come to respect them a little bit more just because of how well they treat their employees. And even though I don't like the fact that they do movies that are specifically for kids, I can't argue that they aren't good at that. I just feel like because they make movies that are not aimed at me specifically, it pretty much makes it harder for me to really enjoy watching their features, to pretty much take them in and accept them the same way I watch DreamWorks or Pixar movies, or just, other studios that do movies for all ages. But again, over time, I did kind of feel like, okay, maybe I'm looking at this wrong. And I have grown to respect them a little bit more. They may not be for me, but they are good at what they do. So why do a review on this one specifically, instead of just going back and doing the first Despicable Me or just one of their other features? And the main reason is because, well, this may just be their best movie. Yeah, I really like both of the Mario movies, which were partially Nintendo's. And Migration was something that was done with someone outside the studio. So, really good movie too. But I think even with all those things, this may just be their best movie. And yes, admittedly, part of it is bias on my end. This is a movie that is a love letter to cinema. They've been saying this for who knows how long since they've been promoting this movie. And yeah, I mean, that's what it is. It's a love letter to cinema. It's a love letter to classic Hollywood. If you have a little one who loves movies, this is definitely worth watching just to get them more interested in old Hollywood. So I was bound to love this no matter what. So to my surprise, it's much crazier that the movie itself is really good even outside those standards. To put it simply, the whole movie is essentially, I don't want to say a retcon or even a reboot of the franchise because it really isn't. But essentially what it's doing is that it's going back to the very beginning with the Minions and how they tend to look for evil bosses. In this case, it establishes a new piece of the lore that suggests that the Minions themselves actually have come from multiple tribes. So the ones that we've been following with Gru and the previous Minions movies are just a small group of minions. There's a lot more, or maybe they all come together with Gru eventually. I don't know, but going by this movie, there are multiple tribes, which kind of frees up the franchise to do more things in the future. Because in this case, it showcases like, okay, while the minions from the other movies had gone into the cold for decades to avoid heartbreak of dealing with masters that they lose, this group instead found themselves in Hollywood of all places, where they essentially became stars of the silent era. Eventually, sound is created, and because the minions don't really speak naturally, it results in the minions being kicked out of Hollywood right away. And one specific minion, James, who is an artist at heart, decides that he wants to do one last hurrah by creating his own movie in an effort to see himself on the big screen once again and to see himself get an Oscar. Pretty much, he is an artist. He wants to do this stuff for the art. The result is that he decides to go off and find monsters for a movie he dubs Minions and Monsters, hence the title. But it turns out that the monsters may have their own ideas of what they want. It's a very simple movie. There's no denying that, and for the most part, this is still a movie aimed squarely at kids. But there's so much passion and love for the material, it feels like it dials itself back to at least have some of that heart come through, that it really becomes the most infectious of the franchise. Like, you, even if you've never liked any of these movies, for the most part, I've only ever really liked the first one. The Minions movies, the Super Mario sequels, I think have their moments, but they're not all that great. This would be the first one since that first movie that feels like there's a lot of heart and passion to it. And surprisingly, it even goes beyond that. There's just so much love for what they're doing here. It's kind of crazy. With that, imagine my surprise that despite the fact that this is a movie that is about old Hollywood, that has a lot of heart, it also manages to have some of the best examples of celebrity voice casting in recent memory. Now, of course, you do have um your main leads, which are the Minions. There's still Pierre Coffin, which is great because, of course, it allows for less distraction with their voices. But then you got people like Trey Parker, who is, of course, mostly known for voice acting. He's, of course, one of the creators of South Park, and he shows up as the main, as the monster villain, Goomy, alongside Phil Lamar and Bobby Moynihan as other monsters who help him out. Which again is great because it's like, hey, more voice actors. And then even beyond that, we get people like Jeff Bridges coming in as the studio execs. He plays not one, but two of them. They're brothers. They're essentially, I'm assuming they're supposed to be like a Warner Bros. Parody, like the idea of like, hey, look, two brothers or whatever. But for the most part, it's like one's like the grumpy brother, one's the happy brother, and Jeff Bridges does change his voice for both of them, so it is a lot of fun hearing him actually mess around with his voice for these characters. You know, you got Jesse Eisenberg as a character named Dort. He's a robot that shows up about midway into the movie. I don't know if he did anything specific with his voice. I know that they do alter it with like a more mechanical sound, but because of that, it is another instance of like, hey, look, the person who's acting is allowed to act, and they don't just sound like, hey, look, we got celebrity number whatever to be this character. So there's a lot of fun stuff that they do with the actors that they get in this movie. Even George Lucas, who they've talked about having a cameo in this, gets a really memorable moment. Like, I saw it coming, and it still made me laugh so hard. There is just so much to love in this movie. Now, with this being a more recent release, this is going to be a shorter review. I don't want to really want to spoil anything. Not that there's anything that you can't spoil in this. I mean, you know, Minions make a movie, monsters are there. The monsters eventually betray the Minions. I mean, this is even in the trailer. But I still don't want to give a whole lot of it away. And this being a comedy means that I also don't want to give away a bunch of the jokes, which is very hard to do because it's like you want to talk about all the humorous stuff. But I will keep it short because this is a movie that just hit theaters. Even by the time this review hits online, which may be a week from when it's recorded, I'm not sure. There is a high chance that this movie will still be playing in the theater when it hits, is my point. That all being said, yes, I should talk about the Hollywood references. There's been some people who have pointed out that a lot of this stuff is not really time period accurate because it's supposed to be within the 1920s to the 1930s because you have the silent era and then moving into the sound era. And yet there's references to like the Maltese Falcon, Citizen Kane, and other movies that are from decades later. Like I said, Jesse Eisenberg plays a robot character, and that is a reference to a very specific sci-fi movie that comes out in the 50s. So, yeah, it plays around with where exactly it's supposed to be in. And while some people might think that's sloppiness on their end, I think it's more or less just them not really trying to be faithful to a specific period. Like, there's still some specific stuff because, of course, there has to be. But for the most part, they're like, look, we just want to honor old Hollywood, what we consider to be the golden age, the classic era, all that stuff of Hollywood. So as a result, we get references to all kinds of stuff that are not of the same time period, but it's fine because it makes for a really good laugh. Like, even if you're not really too big on old Hollywood stuff, there's a lot of this stuff that you might recognize right away just because it's like, look, these are iconic things. Citizen Kane might not be everyone's favorite movie, but there's a lot of people that are bound to know what that is. Same thing with the Maltese Falcon. If you've never seen the Maltese Falcon, you've probably seen a bunch of noir movies, so you know the gist of what a noir is. It's just that if you know what specifically is being parodied, it makes it a lot funnier. And there's a lot of love in that. Like, there's a whole sequence where when the Minions first arrive into Hollywood, their arrival is marked with a train robbery. And, if you know your old Hollywood stuff, you understand why that's the thing that draws them in. And that whole sequence is filled with actors of the period doing gags from that same period. Like, you'll have, a house falling down on a specific actor. You'll have an actor going through the gears of the machines in a factory. All this stuff, and they even do like a whole montage of like, hey, look, different things with the Minions being on, like with the really old stuff. Like, you get a whole scene where the Minions are riding on a horse, where they're pretty much on the moon. So, you get a lot of old Hollywood references, even stuff that is outside of Hollywood, just film in general. There's a lot of love, and I know I'm saying that a lot, but there is a lot of love in this movie for what exactly made movies. It's enough to where it kind of feels like the Mario movies, where it's like those movies have references to Wart from Super Mario Bros. 2. This movie has a reference to Charlie Chaplin. It's crazy. So it's understandable why a lot of film critics are loving this. But I do think that, much as I enjoy the Mario movie, there is a significant difference into why this movie is getting more love than the Mario movie. Because even though it's, yes, just references for a good chunk of it of classic Hollywood, there is enough of an emotional through line in the movie to make it work. Whereas with Mario, specifically in Mario Galaxy, I feel like with the first Mario movie there was a little bit much more of a harshness, but with the second Mario movie, Mario Galaxy, where about midway through the movie, while there is a decent enough story, it does kind of get derailed a little bit by emphasizing a little too much on cameos and crossovers, and while there is hard, it is kind of lost in that. This movie, I feel like it's consistent even as the movie devolves into more chaotic slapstick, because it's like, hey, that chaotic slapstick at the end of the day is what made the Minions, being in Hollywood, specifically classic Hollywood, make sense. Their language, the thing that makes people love the Minions, is physical humor, which has its roots right there. The characters barely having any actual dialogue, the characters mostly speaking in gibberish, and relying largely on pantomiming or beating each other up, is what makes the Minions so timeless. Even though I do think that those other movies were not great, I can't deny I do see the appeal, especially once I open my mind to the idea of like, hey, look, these are not made for me, but it's okay that they're not made for me. To understand that, yeah, that's true, but it doesn't matter. They have their audience. Kids deserve their slapstick, and with how many channels on TV are now just focused on newer programs, and with how many kids probably go to the newest thing even when they're on streaming just because they'll just go for the shiny new thing, it's understandable that they would eventually latch on to something that's new for them specifically, yet old school. With that, I do think that it is a perfect reason to bring the Minions to old Hollywood so that they can be the ones to get the younger kids who have been into this for years or just barely getting into it now to understand where this all came from and where their style of humor originates from. It's just a beautiful thing. I don't know. I'd like to do this movie more justice and tell you more. And maybe I'll do it again some other day when I get someone as a guest host, just because that's what I'd love to do, is just occasionally go back to older movies and rediscuss them, reevaluate them. Especially with this being a recent movie, I think that's going to be deserved. I can't promise any specific date, but I would like to see myself doing this one again with someone else who also loves old Hollywood, or maybe is new to that stuff, and see how we can go about it from there. As it is now, I love this movie. I think it's better than both Toy Story 5 and Hoppers, and pretty much any big studio offerings that we've had for animation this year, which is crazy. I don't know if there's anything else that's going to beat it. I do think there are some smaller animated features that I preferred over this one. Like, I preferred Scarlet. I'm not sure if I've talked about that one before on here, but there are some animated films that I've loved. But in terms of the big studio stuff that's coming out in the US, somehow Illumination has made the best one so far in 2026 with the Minions third entry. It sounds like it's cheap just because it's just making references to old Hollywood, but I promise you it is exactly the kind of movie that I think kids deserve and that adults will love, even beyond just the references. It is just a funny movie with a lot of passion and love for the material, and it just knows exactly why that stuff matters in a world where these characters exist. With that all out of the way, thank you for listening, and I hope to see you again next time.
Piñata, carbonara, lasagna.
Thanks for stopping by. Go ahead and follow this channel. Subscribe, like and comment, ring the bell for notifications. Go ahead and also follow my podcast and give some love to my Patreon account while you're at it. It's www.patreon.com/psychams. Again, thanks for stopping by, and I hope you come back for more in the future.